Okay, welcome to Stampscapes University. This is the lesson that is really key for a lot of different types of aspects of creating mood within a scene, and that's creating scenic lighting, effective scenic lighting, okay? Now, one of the things that I hope to convey in this and hope to get across is just how easy scenic lighting can be. And I'll tell you the two kind of aspects of it that people kind of get wrong if they're just coming into scenic stamping before and they've only been used to coloring objects fully, okay? So a cloud stamp, with other company types of things, I mean, there's different types of images out there, but a cloud might be an outline of a cloud like this. So what they might do is they might color in the area around it fully, one tone, one value, and sort of something like that, and leave the cloud white. Or let's say that cloud is going to be colored a certain color, then they might color in that cloud fully one uniform value, okay? But what we're going to be doing when we're talking about tonal designs is we're not going to see these areas as just one uniform type of space to be colored in equally, okay? And that's the same thing for every aspect of our scenes that we're working on. So let's take a look at the different areas in our scene, okay? Now, on this one right here, we don't have a lot of open area up here, okay? It's could be seen as open sky, and that's right above our clouds, okay? Second area is we have our clouds in here. A third area is this grassy area down here. And the fourth one would be that chapel. All right? Now, if we're coming from kind of what would be like a stained glass type of approach to imagery, we would have this whole area out here, and it would typically be, there would be a line differentiating each one of these areas, okay? And a lot of times what we do is we just color it in like a coloring book. But here, you're kind of doing something similar, but you're just not doing it fully, okay? And it's not harder than coloring in something completely. You're just not coloring it in something all the way. You're leaving some areas of light. Okay, so let's take a look at something like this. Okay, now, what you're going to do is you're going to grab out all of your stamp sketches that you've already stamped out, okay, and we're going to be addressing these ones. So hopefully you have those stamp sketches handy and nearby and accessible. Maybe you've already kind of completed some, I don't know. But what we're going to be doing is I'm just going to be utilizing gray and black. If you don't have grays, you can also just use black. I'll use it both ways, okay? All right, we have our tonal applicator here. Let me do one with the tonal applicator, and then I'll show you just one using a paper towel. Okay, so in these clouds up here, what we're going to do is we're going to retain some light areas of these clouds, okay? What I like to do is I like to tone in some of the darker areas, okay? Now, this gray right here, which is a London fog, is a very light gray, so it might not look as though anything is happening with a few swipes, okay? But what you do is you just kind of stay in a general area that you want to apply that tone, and you build up that value, as light as it might be, okay? So do you see those kind of darker areas coming in? That's as dark as it's going to get. It's not going to get black because we're not using black, we're using gray, okay? All right, now let's take a look at this grassy area down here. What I like to do is I like to think about objects in the grass, if there are any, and I like to address them with some additional shadows underneath them. I figured if there's a tree, right in there, there's probably going to be some shadows underneath it, okay? So we're adding it in like that, okay? Then we're coming underneath these trees on the other side, okay? And this chapel is casting a shadow as well. It's a big solid object. It's not a see-through object. It's not transparent, right? It's not like a glass house, Right, see that right underneath there? There's some shadows down here. Shadows underneath these trees. I can just leave those as is. It looks like the light is already shining down here, right? That was easy enough to do. But now look at this object right here. There are shadows in the design itself. Do you see where I've toned in the different values in here? Shadows underneath this, I forgot what this is called, pediment or something like that. And the side of the house is a little bit darker. I do that to create volumes, okay? So all I'm doing here is I'm just kind of reiterating that with some additional tone. There's some areas on here that are harder to get. You can also use your, let's grab a pen here. This is a gray marker, and I can just kind of reiterate some of those shadows in here. This is an alcohol marker. Create some shadows underneath there. I'm just kind of darkening the things that I have dark in the design, but you see how that kind of creates that additional value right there. Okay, easy to get to with your little alcohol pen. So I'm just kind of making those shadows darker. I can make the side of the chapel darker like that, but look how three-dimensional it looks, and looks like the light is hitting the front of it now. You see what I mean? So we've left some areas light in the clouds, left some area light in the grass, and left some of the chapel lighter. All right? Let's kind of emphasize this a little bit more now with a little bit of black, okay? Or you can go with the darker gray too. If you have a couple different grays, that's fine. All right, let's kind of enhance some of the shadows down here. Now's the time not to just wipe everything out now with your black, okay? Use a little bit more sparingly, okay? I'm just kind of lightly dabbing this on like so. See that? How it's kind of getting a little bit darker. All right. I can add some of this in the shadows as well, underneath my trees, where they're casting a shadow. Now, see, in my illustration classes, every kind of beginning illustration, well, not every, but the ones that I've taught and the ones how I was taught in illustration classes, okay, like first semester is always black and white. They wanted you to be able to get your volumes down, your textures, your kind of thematic content and everything like that, and not worry about color, because there's a lot of other aspects to color that we can kind of, enter into play. But if you can get your scenic lighting down just with grayscale, it's going to make your lighting, when it comes to color, so much more effective and kind of purposeful in terms of your application of it. I could make the sky a little bit, darker too. Let's see, let's take some of that London fog. I like leaving it light up there sometimes so I can add in a lot of white pigment ink in terms of a kind of a nice glowing kind of a misty, soft type of effect too. But let's just hit it up here with a little bit of tone. See how that kind of brings those clouds out now? And you could leave some areas of that sky lighter and, darker if you want to. You can kind of play around with your values up there too. It's such a small little area. Let me try to add some of this slightly darker Marvy gray up there, okay? But we can see what it does and how it affects the overall lighting scheme of the scene, okay? Okay, there we go with that gray. Okay, I had a little bit of a tone up there. It might have been some of that antique linen or something like that. The distress is a slightly warmer looking gray up there. Okay, let's see, it's kind of adding a little bit of black up here too. So here I varied my lighting up there, but there, look at how much those clouds really stand out. All right, so what we have is lighting up here, lighting down here, and it's kind of separated by kind of a little area of darkness right in here on the horizon. But see what's happening here in general is kind of checkerboarding. It goes dark, light, dark, light, dark, okay? All right, let's look at some other pieces here, okay? Let's look at these waterfalls right here. I've been doing some waterfall scenes lately. I find them kind of moving water to be very relaxing and calming, and I thought that would be a kind of a good content for this period of time. Okay, so rocks right here. Do you see how there's shadows on these rocks and darker and lighter areas on them? Let's retain that, okay? Let's emphasize that. I like to leave my water areas lighter, okay? Because it makes for a really nice passageway of light and a visual pathway leading up there. A lot of times people take this and they think, okay, this water is blue, so they just color in like a dark blue. But water, like moving water, think about Niagara Falls, you know, it's like white. It's this churning kind of oxygen-filled water, okay? You'll get cresting waves. They're white. They're not blue, okay? So a lot of times when people are doing water, they just color it all in blue. You can give it a blue tinge, okay? But water is often kind of a good reflector of things that are happening in the sky too. Okay, so you wouldn't do like a navy blue in here. Okay, so what would we do? Okay, let's take and go to our gray in here, okay? See these shadows down here? We're just kind of reiterating those shadows. This water in here, let's leave some areas light. Just tone the whole thing in equally. You can certainly put some color in there if you want to, or in this case gray, but don't do everything, okay? Leave some areas light and dark, okay? So I'm going in with my gray here and toning in some of my rocks. Water, I kind of keep these striations going across there. I'll show you what I mean by that. See how I take these streaks like that? And I leave some areas light like that. You'll be able to see it more when I kind of hit it with a darker tone or darker gray. But watch how this water kind of starts to stand out a little bit more, just like my cloud stood out in the last scene by making the area around it darker. Okay. Okay, do you see my kind of my lighting scheme kind of coming around a little bit? It's not super apparent right now because the London fog is such a light value. Let me just put these together like this. All right, this is the Marvy gray. And I'm just kind of reiterating what I did with the previous gray. The Marvy gray isn't super dark either. Okay. Not going in here completely and filling in that whole area. I'm going to retain some of that lighter, white of the paper in there. See it kind of getting a little bit darker, with this next value of gray. And I'll show you what this looks like if I'm just only using black. Some of you don't have any gray. And remember, too, you can use your Copic markers, or whatever, alcohol marker, whatever markers you happen to have to color in some of these rocks you can use. But, you can do a lighting scheme with pastels or colored pencils or whatever media you have. It doesn't have to be inks like this, okay? The same concepts apply, just retain some areas of light. Okay, see that kind of frothy churning of the water down there in that white? Let's go to black now, okay? Hitting those areas in the darkness. Retaining my light in that water, okay? Here's some shadows down there, right? So look and see, observe. Things you don't have to make things theoretical. All you have to do is just darken some areas that are already dark on the design. You can take your cues right from the design itself. As I make my designs very tonal to give everyone a head start in terms of scenic lighting, okay? I don't leave so much to the user to have to kind of invent themselves. I leave it enough to where there's plenty of variation and variety that you can do with the stamps, but I try not to leave all the tedium and toning and shading, just all up to the user And one of the users, of course, is me, you know, when I come to use my stamps, my own designs. So, all right, do you see this kind of lighting coming around? See how easy it is to do? Let's make this area right next to the water's edge, you know, next to the rocks, a little bit darker. I'm known for a lot of color that I use in my scenes, but I do love a black and white grayscale type of scene too. But look at it, see that right there? Light is kind of coming right down there. This would be a fantastic place for some pigment. And the water is light, like there's that shimmering water pattern, okay? And again, if I make this area in here, the shadows a little bit darker, by contrast, the lighter areas will seem that much lighter. Okay? A lot of times I do it on the perimeter like this. All right, here we go with that. Okay, let me show you what this looks like just using black, okay? All right, let's just grab a paper towel too. Here we don't have really any sky. Well, there wasn't any sky in this one either. Well, let's just do grayscale, just using black, okay? So in theory, when you use your inks like this, every color that you use, you can get, in theory, from its full saturation all the way to white by how much ink you have on your applicator, how much pressure you use, how much, you know, how many times you go over it with a given color, okay? All right, so do you see where the shadows are around in these rocks? Right down here? All right, that's not by chance that that's down there, so what I do, just your paper towel like this, kind of wad it up, kind of even it out a little bit. It almost feels like I'm applying charcoal with this or something like that. It's a little bit scratchy. Hope that's not an annoying sound. Hope it's ASMR or something like that, maybe. Okay, so I'm just kind of pulling it from the outside edge in. This feels a little bit scratchy, so I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to dilute it with a little bit of water, okay? Just to wet it down and dilute it a little bit more. Okay, you might want to kind of wipe it off a little bit. Okay, this feels much better. Ooh, it's really super wet though, so I'm going to be a little bit careful about this. Look how light that is. Isn't that great? Okay, so let's take it out here. See those striations like that? And then I'll come from this angle like this. Okay. So let's put it back there in the distance as well. Okay. So like that. Add a little bit more ink. Blot it off a little bit. Okay, kind of just hitting it in my shadow areas at first. And I'll show you what I can do to my rocks too. See, if I make the rocks, the bottom side of the rocks a little bit darker and leave the tops as is, now it looks like those rocks are being illuminated by kind of top lighting, okay? See what not, even, you know, when objects are not so huge, like a chapel or something like that, if you vary the ink application on certain sides of them, they look more three-dimensional. Okay, let's do the same thing with these rocks over here. Okay. Okay, so hopefully that looks kind of illuminated to you. or a little more so than they looked like before. Okay, kind of adding a little bit more underneath the image, giving a little bit of a stronger shadow. Okay, so I'm starting to build that up a little bit. I can put some in the background as well. See, in the background, you retain some of your light areas. So this area, this little passageway through here, we have our kind of deeper shadows around here. It's like finger painting or something, You can bring out the inner first grader, kindergartner, preschooler inside of us. Sometimes if you dab, you can kind of build up a stronger kind of application of media. All right, so we have that right there. See the variation in here? It's not all uniformly, the same gray. Okay. So I like these streaks a little bit stronger here. Let's go a little bit more like that. There we go. Okay, there's our scenic lighting in that one. Rocks, multi-toned, water multi-toned. Okay, background up there, it's kind of multi-toned. Let's put a little bit more of a variation in it. Okay. Alright, how's that look? We can still color these ones in too. I mean, you don't have to just go with just straight black. Okay, now these here, let's see what we can do with these ones right here. This is just all wide open. I'll show you what it, kind of an extreme version of this kind of streaking looks like. Alright, so instead of just doing this all uniform like that, let's hit this with some gray tones, okay? And then we'll vary it still within that space, okay? Alright, I need a lot of gray here because that's a big open area. I just re-inked this gray pad as well. And again, it's London fog. Let me do something right here. This is a big open area, and I always tell people, if you have a ringer, and you're doing a lot of toning of a given area, it's just so much easier just to start with some ringer fluid. All right, and just take that in. See, that's kind of that strong saturation. And there's just a ton of it in this sponge tip now, and I can just kind of really spread it around very easily. Okay. All right, so those kind of streaks and striations. Let's move up to the Marvy gray. Okay. I don't see too much of a difference here. There's still a lot of the London fog in this tip right here. The black will really be the thing that kind of brings things out. All right, let's move up to the black. And do you see how I'm always kind of turning my card in the direction that's going to give me the most comfortable streak? When I'm doing these streaks like this, this is the comfortable motion for my hand, okay? So if I want to do that over here, I turn my card that way. When I want it to come in from this way, I turn the card that way. I'm probably not working kind of right side up most of the time when I'm doing these cards. I'm just concentrating on this one little area. This area that I'm working on right now. I'm not thinking about the rest of the areas, okay? Alright, see how that's going there? I have variation in the sky. It's not only light and dark, but there's different gradations of light and dark within the space where there is tone, and that would look even more, well, I don't know if it looked more effective, but there's more possibilities. Let's say if I did yellows, oranges, reds, or something like that for a sunset sky. But this is one of those instances where I wiped off some of that stamp before we stamped it out, that, in terms of that lesson. But look how effective that is with that lighting being in here, shining off those trees. It looks really illuminated right now. Doesn't it look like the light is kind of coming from within the card? All right, this one's, would be done the same way. Let's take a look at, let's take a look at this one. Okay, let's see here. Same thing up here in the sky. Okay, we'll have a little bit more sky on this one than we did on this one or the previous 2, 3. See how you just kind of leave an area up there in the sky, light, okay? And it really doesn't matter where you do it. It's just as long as you leave some, okay? Here's some clouds, retaining some of the areas of the clouds that are light, or I'm defining it, light and dark in here, okay? But see how effective that is now? Look at, doesn't it look like the light is really kind of shining on those clouds? We have a light source and reflected light. Let's put some reflected light down here as well. Okay. So not addressing that entire water area exactly the same way across that whole space, but I'll just leave some light somewhere. I guess in this one it'll be kind of makes sense to leave it kind of central. Okay, and this little cabin in here, let's kind of tone that in a little bit. Okay, a little bit with the Marby gray. It's coming along pretty fast. I mean, we're really establishing that scenic lighting very quickly here. I think this was the example of stamping out those clouds in like a second impression. I don't think I stamped them out in gray. I think I just did it in a, blotted black. Look how effective this is. We have sky, clouds. Well, clouds are in the sky, but this is one area, 2 areas. Even that little subject right there, it's kind of an area, and I'm just toning in the sides of it right there, okay? With the water here, you leave light in here, light there, and light there. Now, is it harder to leave some of that area up there? Well, not really. I mean, if you do this kind of transition like that, you know, this kind of tapered type of stroke like that, or, you know, just kind of keep it a little bit darker on the outside. I think it's easy to do that, okay? Some people find it hard to do. They just have to fill in the whole thing. It's because they've just been trained to do that in terms of coloring. You know, a sky is like blue, you know, or markers in the cloud or something like that. Cabin is just going to be all brown, so they just color it all brown, okay? They don't see the lights, but I mean, it's not that hard to kind of develop that sensibility or to just get it back if they've lost it through, you know, a lot of toning in, okay? You just got to remember to just to leave some areas light, okay? And it takes a conscious effort if you're just not used to doing that. But once you do it like twice, I would say 3 times, then you've got it good. You'll see it after that. And you'll see it especially when you're working with grayscale too. Grayscale brings everything out because you're not thinking about intensity, color, temperature, things like that. Those types of issues, okay? Grayscale, you know, it's all about kind of a value for the most part, you know. We're not doing like warm grays and cool grays or something like that here. Okay? So it'll really showcase your kind of sensitivity towards scenic lighting, and it'll really bring that out in your pieces. And when you go back to color, you will be a master of your color, as long as you remember kind of the lessons you learned in terms of the you know, the grayscale lighting pieces. All right, this one will be fun right here. Do you remember these ones right here where we stamped out our trees in gray instead of just in black to create that extra depth? Let me show you what those gray trees look like back there when we add on some additional tone, like grayscale tones, okay? All right, let's get this on here like so. Okay. Here's the paper towel, you know, if you want to see me use more of that paper towel. Like this, okay. I want all these techniques to be very accessible to you guys, okay? Okay, now let's say you don't have any gray and, you know, you're not comfortable doing it in black. Do this grayscale thing. Just use blues, you know, use a light blue and maybe a dark blue or something like that. Okay, see those areas? These certain areas light up in that sky. Okay. Here's our rocks down here. Leave some of those rocks a little bit light. Oops, I almost toned them all in. I'll try to leave some a little bit light. But, I mean, there's no right or wrong here. Oh, these are ones where I stamped out my reeds in gray as well as black, okay? Okay, there's not very much water down here, but I'll leave a little bit of that water light like that. Okay, so you see how those trees are starting to kind of blend into the background. Let's go ahead and use the Marvy Gray, which is quite a bit darker. I wasn't expecting that, but we'll just go with it. Okay. We'll kind of use this kind of around on the perimeter. Like this. See how those gray trees are starting to kind of blend into the background? That's your lighting right there. You want things to kind of merge and blend in the background like that. Okay. Alright. Now let's use some black. Let's just go ahead and use the paper towel. If you have the tonal applicator or other type of sponging tool, go ahead and use that. Alright. See that really starting to merge in right there and blend in. Okay, see those little striations up there? Those are really fun to do. And this is really fun when I add in like extra white pigment ink back into this. We're not going to do that on this lesson here. We're just going to keep this on our lighting. All right, look at this thing really coming together here. Okay. Look how beautiful that is, and it's just so simple, you know, grays and blacks. Sky area, water area. Well, there's rocks too. Light and dark, light and dark, light and dark. Simple stuff here. Okay, here's a real similar one. Well, let's not do this one. It's so similar. A lot of times we have just sky imagery. There's your clouds. There's the Milky Way. It's already dark and light, you know, in all these different spaces. Let's try to really emphasize certain areas, though, okay? Hit it with some grays like this, okay? Don't try not to tone everything out, but let's bring a little emphasis to some of these stars, maybe. What I usually do is I'll come in here like this with some color, okay? So it won't tone everything out, but and I'll go back in, I'll splatter paint in some additional stars, so we'll have some different colors stars, different value stars. All right? So see that right in there, where that gray is? Now let's do the same thing and around on some clouds. And these clouds right here tend to be a little bit more perimeter oriented, okay? But look at this. Darkening it up right there, it kind of really brings some emphasis to those clouds up there. Okay, see how I'm just kind of going around on the perimeter like that? You can leave some kind of light, you know. And it really just doesn't really matter where you leave it, just as long as you kind of oscillate a little bit. So you see all those clouds, where they're really being illuminated now from the use of the grayscale around them. I won't come in and do too much because, you know, this scene is really well established already in terms of the scenic lighting because of the tones that are in the designs inherently. But we can kind of enhance them a little bit more with some additional color additions, okay? Like especially around on the perimeter to kind of bring emphasis into the scene. All right, there's your paper towel there. Let me try this a little bit more with the one thing about the sponge applications, not necessarily just the stylus tool, but you can use like a household sponge too, kitchen sponge, you know, to tap in some extra tone into your scene. Cosmetic sponges work really well. I like them, cosmetic sponges, for me, better than cosmetic brushes, okay? Cosmetic brushes work pretty good though for a really light kind of airy application of color, but usually I want a little bit more saturation faster. Okay, so you see that kind of building up in there? See, certain areas, I'm making them a little bit darker, but by doing so, I make the other areas lighter by contrast, so they really kind of stand out at you, and that's what I want my stars to do a lot of times. I want certain stars to really kind of pop out at me. But look at that, kind of a celestial, you know, kind of atmosphere or whatever, environment here. All right, lights and darks. Lights and darks. Those celestial ones are really fun like that. Okay, here's another one. Instead of having kind of a Milky Way in here, we just have the clouds circling around in here. I think this looks just great as is, but I think it could look better with some additional tone. Okay, let's go in with some grays. Let's bring a little bit more emphasis to that light right there. Okay, so I'm kind of going on around on the perimeter like this. Okay, we'll hit it a little bit up here. Don't go all the way down. Kind of have that light emanating from here, so have that kind of central area a little bit more lit or illuminated, okay? See, there's darker areas on the cloud itself. I do have variation in that cloud cumulus. It's not all just a similar texture. And that's for a reason, so we can have that emphasis of directional lighting inherent in the design itself, so that the user doesn't have to create that. You know, if you do 5 impressions of it, you won't have to do that 5 times with your toning here. It's already in the stamp itself for ease of use. Okay? Alright, so see that right there? Look how much light now is coming through there, through the use of this barely, you know, a barely there value of gray. Okay, London fog. Here's the Marvy one. Let's add a little bit more of the Marvy. Okay, let's go ahead and add some black, maybe. Okay. We'll try to make that area much lighter by adding a little bit more contrast around on, well, maybe mostly on the perimeter. Okay, so now we do this. Doesn't it look like the light is coming from within the card now by just making the area around it a little bit darker? There's a little bit of tone in here. So there's lights and darks on the clouds. And that's pretty much all that's happening in here, because there's no land or anything like that. We just have the silhouettes of the trees. Okay, so let's take a look here. We've done a lot of these right now. Let's take a look at them. Okay. So in each one of these, does it look like kind of the lighting is coming from within the card? And it's because in each one of these spaces and areas, there's both light and dark within them, okay? And see how I haven't toned everything out in any one of those spaces, okay? Like completely. There's always some variation in here. Well, these are really fun. Let me see some more of these ones right here. Here's this kind of grassy meadow. You saw me add in some tones underneath the trees here. Okay. Yeah, these ones are all really similar. Here's the reflection of the sky in the water. You can do the same thing that we did on this one right here and here. Okay. On this one right here, same type of passageway of light that is in this one right here. Okay. And you can do the same thing right here. You do just have some kind of tones right, you know, at the base of each one of these objects, you know, so they're casting, you know, their light down this way. Okay, so that is scenic lighting right there. I also have another video called Easy Scenic Lighting or something like that. So it's kind of going over the same type of thing, but I'm talking about this concept that's not in every one of these, but it's an easy way to go, and it's just where you have this kind of area of light up here, and then it's kind of divided by an area of darkness somewhere with an area of light down here. I mean, on here I've kind of taken this whole area and kind of divided that up a little bit more, so I've bisected this area of light. But in most times, I mean, there's an area of light right here, so it goes light, dark, light down here, okay? It's kind of what's happening here. It's light, dark, you know, see this right, darkness, and light down here. Yeah, this one not quite so much, but there's an area of light in here, and I've kind of, you know, put some streaks across in here, and there's this area of light down here. It's not as light as, you know, back in there, but you can see where it kind of is. There's kind of like a whole passageway of light right in here. And this one, you know, I don't know if I bisected this. A little bit of tone across in here, so there's light, a little bit of darkness in here, then another area of light down here. Okay? But the biggest point about this whole thing is just to vary your values, okay? And again, I think grayscale is the perfect tool to do this with, and hopefully you have your, or hopefully you stamped some of these out with me if you wanted to do these, or you can do it now or whatever. Watch my Stampscapes U University, those first couple lessons on composition, and just doing them in black and white, because this is really fun to do. I mean, what is this, 2, 4, 6, 8 scenes in there, and they're all, you know, pretty well addressed as far as scenic lighting goes. We can tint these now, you know, and add color to them. They're going to look different than if I just started off with colors, you know. It has a different feel to it, but they do look really cool. Let's say I wanted to add in some, you know, blues or something like that to this pool down here. You would just kind of be tinting the scene a little bit. You wouldn't have to go through the whole color spectrum of, you know, blue tones to create the shadows, because you've already had them established with your grayscale. So it's a fun way to work. And, you know, even like something like this, I can add greens down here in the grass and blue up here in the sky and, you know, whatever to this chapel right here. And it would be some kind of like color tinted version of these pieces that, you know, is kind of similar in approach to excuse me, black and white photo tinting that they used to do back in the day. Okay, so anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a note. Hope this has all been nice and handy for you. And I really can't emphasize enough how much fun it is to work in grayscale, and just really how effective it can be to really increase that sensitivity, you know, and your kind of your eye towards varying values for the purpose of scenic lighting, and just variation too. The more varied your surface area in terms of your values, the more rich, you know, a surface it is. And when you have that kind of sensitivity towards values, I think that's more than kind of an equal component to the other aspects of color. Okay, there's value, intensity, temperature, and hue. Okay, but I think that value is 50% of the mood of a scene, because that's where your lighting comes in. And the other 50% is divided up between hue, you know, the color, intensity, and temperature. So get this down, and, you know, you have most of the work done in terms of kind of effective kind of the creation of mood in a scene. And I think that's the thing that creates that kind of emotional bond and tie to your scene. And it makes it very evocative for people, and not only that, but very transportive. It's that light, you know, and the different types of light that you might create in a scene that, you know, kind of creates this transportive type of experience when you're doing your scenes, and that you can really get into your scenes and kind of get lost into the moment and the location and atmosphere that they are going to represent. All right, so anyways, thanks again, and looking forward to the next Stampscapes University lesson.